In this lesson, we're going to learn how to control our disable control system using the before and after render Python commands inside of our right node. So here's where we left off, and we again have this disable node controller, which lets us disable multiple expensive nodes. So whenever or before we hit render, we always need to come over, find wherever this node is, and hit D, and probably pause the viewer so it doesn't update, and then hit render. Now it would be nice if all of this was automated for us, and we can actually do this inside of our right node. So let's go to our right node, and we'll jump over to the Python tab. Now there's 4 different lines here, and they correspond to when we want this code to run. So do we want the code to run before the render even starts, before each individual frame starts, after each frame, or after the entire render is done? So in this case, we want to do one action before we render, which is disable or re-enable this controller if it is disabled, and then afterwards we can disable it again. So to do this, we have to type in a little code here. So in before render, let's type in nuke, and then we need to access the node. So we'll type in a period key to node, not T node, to node, and then we'll do open close parentheses. So open close above the 9 and the 0. And finally, we'll type in the node name. So let's actually just copy this over. I'm just going to copy this, paste this in between the parentheses, and we actually need to say this is a name or that it's a string, so let's put this inside of single quotation marks. And just to make this a little easier to read, I'm just going to copy this over to a large notepad so we can see this a little bit easier. Alright, so again we have those single quotation marks, and then we need to access what knob on this node, or which knob, so let's type period key knob. And then again with that open close and the 2 single quotes or double quotes. And we want to enable, or we want to access the disable. So if you hover over, it tells you what this is actually called in the programming. So if we see it's bolded, and it is just called disable. So if we jump back, we can just type in disable. And then we have to do something to this knob. So we want to set the value. So period key again, set value, and again our parentheses, and we'll set the value to 0, which enables it. So the wording of this is a little tricky because enabling it is actually the inverse of enabling the knob value. So we can say this is on, this is off, and so 0 is turning it on by setting the disable to 0. So I'm just going to copy this and paste this into the before render, and let's just test this out. Let's see here in our right, we'll need to put it somewhere, so I'm just going to write out a temp image, and let's see here. We'll hit render, frame 1, and you can see this gets re-enabled as the render is happening, and as soon as the render is done, nothing is going to happen because we haven't come in and set anything in the after. So I'm just going to cancel that. So again, if our disable or our node controller is disabled, whenever we hit the render key, so I'm going to hit F7 and click OK, the render command, or excuse me, F5 and hit OK, the render command will re-enable it, so we never have to, or we never render without this turning back on. Now, let's say we want to come in here and after rendering, we want to re-disable this. That's very simple. We just need to jump over to the Python. Let's just copy paste this and change the code value to 1. And this will enable the disable knob so that everything is disabled. So again, just to see this, I'll let the render actually complete this time. So let's see here. I hit F5, hit OK. Again, it enables it if it's not enabled. And we'll just pause the video while this renders, and as soon as it's getting close to finishing, I'll unpause the video. All right, it looks like it's about to complete, maybe in 8 seconds. So the Python commands are an incredibly powerful way to control the nodes and control these types of nodes and expressions inside of Nuke and automate what we would do during a render setup. Well, it just finished rendering, and it looked like it did not re-disable this. So let's actually just test our code, and to do that, we can bring up our script editor. So up by your viewer, you can right-click and bring up a new script editor tab. I'm just going to copy this after render into here, and you'll see it lets us see the actual values here. And then we can click this enter button and it will run that code. We can see it does disable it, so that's a little strange that this did not actually run. So let me jump over here and hit render again just to test this out. It looked like we were just having a little bit of a refresh issue on my node graph here, and if we click on the node graph we can see that it is working correctly. So in this lesson we took a look at how we can use the before render and the after render Python commands to automatically control our disable node controller, so that whenever we hit render it'll come in, enable all of the nodes we need enabled, and then after render it will go back and disable all of our expensive nodes. And this is just another way we can work faster and not worry about producing errors or having things not appear in our final scene by using the Python commands in the right node.